Hi, I'm Mike Thompson. I've needed a disc sander for a long time. I never really wanted to get around to buying one, and you know me, I'd always rather make something myself rather than buy it. So, using some parts I had laying around, wood, motor, switches, and things, I made my own, semi-portable, disc sander. Now, I actually don't use this a whole lot. My son does most of the sanding on this, and so we call it the Alex sander. Let me show you how I did it. So I'm going to use this piece here as a base, and I need to measure how high the shaft is here off the base so I can make another base to elevate this motor, because I need a 12-inch disc. So I cut a couple pieces here of Baltic birch plywood, my go-to material, to make this little stand for the bottom of the motor. Because like I said, I need a 12-inch disc. And I probably need an 1/8-inch clearance. So I've got everything marked up here, and so I'm just gluing my little legs and set the motor on top and mark where I need to drill for the mounting bolts. And there's my base. And now time to drill it. I start off just locating the holes here with the brad point bit before boring all the way through the base as well, because I'll show you why here. Now I need to enlarge these bottom holes. I know that this was a little bit tricky using a Forstner bit when I didn't have a reference point in the center, but I made it work. What I want to do is embed some nuts inside these and make sure that I can get my socket set down through there. And a 9/16 spade bit will allow me to embed this nut here then in the bottom of my little stand, as you'll soon see. These are lock nuts that I'm using, and you can see it just sucks right up there. I love embedding nuts and stuff. Whenever I do it there, I always make sure that the flat of the nuts is parallel to the grain. It makes it easier to do. And I think it makes for a stronger joint. And so now you see, I'm 6 1/8 above the base. Perfect. Because I'm going to have a 12-inch disc. That'll give me an 1/8-inch clearance here at the bottom. And I can locate exactly where the disc is going to be here. These circular pieces here will slip over the shaft of the motor. Use this 5/8 bit here to drill the second one, because it's a 5/8 shaft. And then I just got to cut this little keyway. Piece of cake. All right, that's all glued up and ready to go. And so then I'll just slip it on the motor here. It's nice and snug. All right. Beat the crap out of it here. Get it on there. And I just hope it's all straight. Oh, well, not quite. We'll see how far it's out here in a second. That may be okay. I don't love it. Let's check back in. Yeah. Okay, anyway. Time to make the table and other parts. More Baltic birch. This is 3/8, because that's what I had left over here. Glue it all up here. I've got a support there in the bottom. That'll also stop a lot of the dust from going forward. And I plan to put a dust collector on the back side of this. It's actually going to be a 2-in-1 tool ultimately. It'll be a sander / dust collector, and it'll collect its own dust along with the dust of other tools. Get that all clamped up for a while. And then I'm mounting this table to the base because I need to be able to remove it sometimes. So I'm attaching it here on the bottom with screws instead of glue. And mark here where the disc actually is on this, because I want part of this to wrap around to kind of help shield and contain any additional dust. And maybe provide a work surface around the backside if I ever need it. And then a little bandsaw magic here. Ultimately, this was probably a waste of time to do it this way, but it worked out fine and I like the way it looked. So, there we go. And that slips over just like that. And so now I've got a 2-layer sub base here for the little work table. These are going to glue together. Get this glued in place. And just get it flush with the top of those 2 side pieces there. And then once that's flush, I can glue the top part on. And then of course I still have to make the actual work table. And a little bit of glue here in the middle to help keep it from bending. Give it a little bit of rigidity. Not that I'm going to have a huge downforce on it, but you never know. Okay, and clamp that like that for a while. And so now, making the work table. If you noticed before, I had my two other tables about 1/4 to 1/2 inch away from the actual disc. That's because this top surface, this work table, is actually going to adjust back and forth so that I can change, how close it is to the disc for clearance and stuff. And then I need to route 2 little slots here so that it's able to slide. This is the sub table, of course. I don't want slots in my top table because I want I want it to be as flat as possible and not a lot of holes in it. Just the 2 holes for the embedded bolts that I'm going to use. Like so. Like I said, whenever I embed nuts or bolts, I always make sure that the flats are parallel to the grain. And embedding stuff in wood's just a hoot and a half as far as I'm concerned. And then I'll just use wing nuts here on the bottom to secure it with some washers, and then that'll allow me to easily adjust it as needed. And I may someday route a groove in this so that I can use my little miter gauge with it, but I don't know. I've never really used a miter gauge on a sander as of yet, and so I may not. There it goes. Now you can see why it's important to be able to adjust it. You can see that's got some run out there. That's no good. Now, obviously I can't just plug this thing in and unplug it every time I want to turn it on and off. That wouldn't be convenient at all. So I've pulled this old paddle switch out of my parts bin, and I'm going to use that. It's going to go like that, I think. Get it. This is just a test fit. Okay, and so now my cord obviously has to somehow be spliced into this switch. So I think what I'm going to do is run it, I'll leave myself a little slack, I'll run it back into there, and I'm not going to cut the cord, I'll just peel this off here and only cut into the black wire. Because there's no ground on this switch. There's nowhere to put the ground, so I'm not going to wire up the ground to the switch. I'm just going to tap into the black wire here and put some terminals on it and then attach that to the back of my switch. And I think that'll work quite nicely. I'm only using one side of the switch here because I could control 2 circuits with this, but I'm not going to. So just like so. And then stuff it in there like that. Plug it in, hopefully it doesn't turn on. It doesn't. Haha! It's working! It's working! Still a little bit wobbly. So, we'll use this dial indicator here and figure out exactly how far out it is. Oh my. There's 50, 56. So I gave up and designed and 3D printed this little thing here. A nice little hub, which should be perfect. Align it with my 5/8 bit and then drill. Now I'm using these are not wood screws, these are 832 socket head cap screws, but they'll thread in the wood just fine for what I'm doing. And then 6 of those secures my new hub in place. And this thing is perfect. It's got the keyway and everything already built in. Boom, right in there. Secure it with the set screw. You can see it's still a little out, about 26, but it's totally acceptable. The piece of wood I'm using for my disc is not flat. I've got a couple ideas to fix that later, but for now, this is good enough. But you can see that really wasn't all that difficult. Just some measuring, some math, and then of course this one 3D printed part here near the end. But this is something you can definitely do yourself. Just don't be afraid to try. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Mike Thompson, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.